Okay, so we're back here. This is going to be the third part to the fourth episode here. In the last video, I promised that I would go out and finish all the data sources, and then we come back and we do the repository, but I lied. As I was doing these data sources, I noticed a very good opportunity to refactor something that we did, and I figured that would be, valuable. So we're going to take care of that now, and then we will come back into repository in the next episode, hopefully. So anyway, I went and did like I said, and I created these data sources for each one of the procs that we had in the database. So if you watched the last video, you know exactly what these are. But since we abstracted all the query and the query collection and the non-query stuff, see how simple these classes are. They're super thin. But one of the things I noticed, I didn't think about this before, but here in the employee get all source, we have the instructions for how to read the data record into an object. This is for get all employees. But if we go over to get by ID source, get by ID source, we have the same exact reader right here. So we're seeing some repetition of code again. And this also leaves a door wide open for some maintenance nightmares. So, for instance, if we were to take this employee data class and in the database we added maybe a couple of new fields, we'd have to come back and update this employee data class as well, right? Because we said that our data classes were going to model exactly the data that was being returned from the database. So then if we did that, we would have to come back here and add the new property to make sure that it's getting read out. But then we do also have to track down every instance of where it's actually being read out. So if we were to add, a few more procedures, what if it was like get employee by account number or get employee by username, not just ID? We have 5 or 6 instances of exactly this reader. Right, and then if we made a change to the database, we have to come here and find all those instances and then update the reader. And you see where I'm going with this. So this is a perfect opportunity to kind of refactor our approach here and sort of centralize the reading function here, so that if we do make that change, we can change it in one place. So there's a few different ways we can do that. I've chosen a way before we came in here that I think will be the most flexible. And let's go ahead and take a look at that now. So if we go into our base class here, we're looking at query single source right now. So we'll just go into our base class. And one of the things that we said is, hey, this get from reader method is required, right? It's abstract, so it requires you to override and implement your own get from reader. So if we look over here, we do have our override. That's exactly what we did. So we have an option. We can either, we have a number of options, but the one that I'm thinking is we can either create a property that has this instruction in here, or we could separate it out into a different class that just has a static method that knows how to read it or whatnot. But at the same time, we have some procs in here that are never ever going to have more than one. It's just going to have one read, right? So we don't want to force those procs that create their own class just to read it. So let's give it an option. So what we're going to do is we're going to redesign this so that when you create a data source, you can choose if you want to do it this way, where you just override the abstract and implement your own reader method. Or we're going to also give it the option to where you can get the reader from somewhere else. And that'll make more sense as we go on. So the first thing that we're going to do, since we want to make it optional, this can't be abstract anymore. So we're going to have to change this. So let's go ahead and give it a method body, and we're going to remove abstract. But what we're going to do is we're going to make it virtual. And what that's going to allow us to do is anybody who derives from this class has the option to override this functionality here. Okay, so now when you do a virtual, generally what you want to do is provide some sort of default implementation, right? So what if if the person implementing the class doesn't want to override this method, then what does he do? right? So, well, what's our default going to be? We don't have an object to work with because it's kind of unknown right now, so we don't know what to map it to. And the answer to that question is actually leads us towards a nice implementation as well, at least I think. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add a property, and we're going to make this a protected property. And this is going to be of type func, right? And if you don't know what func is, that's basically, for lack of a better term, this is a delegate in some way. Yeah, it's pretty much a delegate. So this func, the generic parameters here, it takes one or more parameters, and basically what it does is it takes everything is going to be, let's say, k, oh shoot, stop doing that. Okay, so let's, sorry, I'm a little flustered here. Error. Okay, so I have some other third-party thing in here. What you want is system func. Okay, I have some Antler, whatever, third-party library. But anyway, so the func type, come on fingers, takes two or one or more generic parameters, and the very, very last parameter is going to represent your output, and everything before it is going to be considered an input. So you can have one input, two input, three inputs, it doesn't matter. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a delegate that's going to take care of this get from reader. So the method signature has to be the same in that it takes in an iData record and outputs whatever t output ends up being, right? So we'll mimic that here. Takes in an iData record and outputs a t output, right? Because like we said, the last parameter is always going to be the output, and everything before it is going to be an input. So now these two match. Cool. And we're going to call this property reader, and we're going to give it a getter and a setter. Cool. So that doesn't have any value in there right now, but we'll get to that. So what this is going to do is when it gets set, this is going to contain the actual function, the actual function that is going to perform the exact same thing that our reader has been doing up until this point. Okay? Now with that in mind, what we can do is we can tell this simply to call this. Okay? Now that can cause some problems. So we don't know if, we're basically relying on the person who derives from this class to put something in there. So what we're going to do first is we're going to come down to our formerly abstract method, and we're going to say if the reader that we just the property we just created, if it's null, we're going to throw an exception, and we are going to make it an invalid operation exception, and we're going to say reader cannot be null. Okay. If it's not null, then we're just going to go ahead and run it, which means we can return reader, and then we'll feed it whatever got sent into this method. So where does that come from? Well, we remember up here we're calling this what used to be an abstract method. We were calling it, right? We were assuming that the child class would have implemented its own. So we're not changing that logic. We're still going to call this method, but it's not abstract anymore. And our default implementation, right, because this is a virtual in a base class, our default is to run this property, which is up here, right? So what this does, what this is going to do, is this is going to give the child class the opportunity. It's going to give it an option. You can either override this method, or you can set the functionality right here. Now what does that all mean? Okay, let's go make some sense of it. So over here we have get ID by source, right? And we had our override of what used to be the abstract method here, get from reader. Notice that it's not broken, right? Because we're still following the exact same the same strategy here, right? This is an override of what is now a virtual method over here. Right? So it didn't break anything. So all of our classes will still work right now. But this happens to be one of those readers that reads employee data, right? This is the one that we have in multiple places. So watch what happens. I'm going to go ahead and delete this entire method, and notice that the class is not broken anymore. Or rather, it's not at all, right? It didn't break. It used to be abstract, so before it was virtual, this would have, it would have had a red line right here saying, hey, you still have to implement this class. But now it doesn't, because it's optional. Right, so let's go ahead and put this back. Now what we want to do is we want to take this logic for building this employee object, which is identical to this one, and we want to go ahead and pull them out somewhere else so that we can get it into a central location. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to my data source namespace, and I'm going to go ahead and add another folder, and I'm just going to call it data readers. And in this folder I'm going to put anytime I have something that I've abstracted from the data source, I'm going to go ahead and put it here. So the first one I'm going to make is I'm just going to call it employee data reader. That's it. That's all I'm going to call it. Okay, and I'm going to give it one method, which is employee data, right? And we're just going to say read. And then again, we have our input, which is going to be iDataRecord reader, just like everything before. But now I'm going to, over here from my get from ID source, I'm going to go ahead, or did I get it here? So we'll do employee get all source, right? And we're going to come inside this method that we made before, and I'm just going to cut it right out of there, and I'm going to go back to my data reader, and I'm going to paste it right here, and bam, we're done. Just clean this up. That's it. So now I don't want to have to new this up, so I'm going to go ahead and make it static, right? Because it's not going to change. It doesn't have any dependency on instance variables, so I'll just go ahead and make it static. Okay, I'm going to save that. Now I'm going to go back to this where I cut it out of, and I'm going to take this method and I'm going to delete it because I don't need it anymore, right? Oh, this is the collection source. We're doing the single source right now. Okay, so this whole method is deleted, gone. Okay, so now if we go back to our base class here, this is going to, now that we have an we got rid of the override, now this is going to fall back to its default, which is just going to call this reader property here. So we need to make sure to set that. So we're going to come back to our get by ID source, and we're going to go to the constructor, right? It didn't have anything in it anyway. And we're going to say, hey, reader, you're equal to, and then we have this data reader over here that we just created. We're going to say employee data reader dot read. That's it. So now what we're doing is we're taking this method that we put in this class, we're going to suck it out and we're going to stuff it into this reader. So now when our base class calls get from reader, it'll send in this input, or sorry, get from reader, it'll send in this input, and it will detect, hey, this guy did set the reader, so we're good, keep going. Go ahead and run that reader and use this as your input, and then return the results. That's it. So now what we've done is this class, since it has a common reader, we don't want to repeat ourselves, so we'll just go ahead and pull that logic out to here, and then we'll just load that in as a reader here. So now we need to do our get all source. Now if you remember, we have a different base class for this, so what we're going to have to do is query single source. We're going to have to recreate this in our query collection source. Same exact thing. So we get to go through this exercise again. No big deal. So we go back to our abstract get from reader, and we make it not abstract anymore. We make it virtual. Right? And then we also want to make sure that we create this property, which is protected func iDataRecord, which returns t output, and it's called reader. Right? Get set. and then we want to make sure that that's not null, so we're going to say if reader is null, throw new exception, which is going to be the invalid operation exception. Reader cannot be null. That doesn't flow. Go ahead and run that reader. Done. So now we can go back to get all source, now that we've updated our collection source, and we can again get rid of this entire method because it's the same one as the other one, right? Go back to our constructor, reader equals employee data reader read. Notice we don't do this method thing right here, right? Because we're passing it in as a method group, so this is enough. So we're setting our delegate, and now when our base class goes to call that, it'll be there. Cool. And we're all done with that. Now we have that other one too. We still have query source. Now query source, we don't have to do anything to it because we don't have the get from reader, right? Because it's a non-query. We're not actually getting data back, so we don't have to do anything here. So now what we want to do is we would want to go update our data sources that have common readers in them as well. So we'll go up to department. Let's go ahead and close all these. We go to department, select all source, right? And it has this little reader here too. So what we're going to do is we're going to extract this just like we did before, right? So we'll go to data readers, and we'll go and we'll create one just like we did with employee. And we'll say department data reader, and this is going to return department. Oh, I named it different. Employee department data. We'll say read, and this takes an iData record reader. And then we can come over here, we can grab that, paste it right in here, and then of course we want to make it static. Clean up this code, save that, and now we don't need this anymore. Get rid of the whole thing, come back into the constructor, set the reader as excuse me, employee data reader. Oops. Data reader dot read. And why are we red? Collection source. Department data. Oh, we did employee data reader. We want employee department. What did we call it? Oh, we called it department. Department data reader dot read. There we go. So the reason this might look kind of weird, so when I went and created all these data sources, remember we wanted to create data classes for each of the database entities, right, to model the data that was being returned. So I had to go in and create an entity for, we did employee in the last video, right? So I did department and position, but I didn't want to call it department data because that might get reused again somewhere else. So I wanted to be more specific, and I called it employee department data. And that's just to make sure, to avoid any ambiguity. That's it. That's all it was. So anyway, back to what we were doing. We updated this class for select all source for department, and now we want to go and do select by ID source. We'll do the exact same thing, but now we've already created a reader, so we can delete this because we don't need it anymore. And then we'll set the reader over here equals to department employee department data reader dot read. That's it. We're done. So do we have any more? We have the insert, update. Nope. The rest of them are non-queries. And then we can do it for position too. So position select all. Now we need a data reader for position. So we call it position data reader. I'm going to say public static employee position data read which takes iData record reader, and then we go back over here. We're going to copy this logic, paste it here, and we're static. Clean that stuff up, and we're done with that. We can get rid of this override, but now we want to set the reader equals position. Oops, what did I call it? Position data reader dot read. Clean that guy up. Notice our data source is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and really all it's doing is we are creating a child class that all you have to do is you just need to set a couple specific things. So that was select all. Now we'll do position select by ID, but we can get rid of this override now and go ahead and set the reader since we already made it. Position. Wait a minute. Notice I got the wrong procedure here. This is position select. Position select by ID is the actual. Select by ID is the actual name of the procedure. Oh, interesting. So anyway, the reader is position data reader dot read. That's it. So now we're all done. So now what we've done is we've removed the readers from the class, but you still have the option to do that. So if you don't want to do it like this later, for instance, if you have a stored procedure that will only ever have one form of the reader, and this is the only one of it ever, we're not going to need to reuse it, then you can still do it the old way, which is where you say protected override, and then you do the get from reader. You can still do this if you want to, but if you don't, then you just have to make sure to set this reader. And that is the beauty of abstracting your classes. So yeah, so like I said, the purpose of this video is just to take an opportunity to recognize redundancy in the code and refactor our code to kind of clean that up and save us some time in the future. And by what we did is we went ahead and talked about a way to delegate logic, and we abstracted a reader from our data sources so that we can reuse them later should we need to. And if any of those readers ever fail, there's only there's a single point of failure. We know exactly where to look. If we update those data classes, we can come here and just update it in one place, and we'd be good to go. Cool. So that's all I got for this video. We'll come back in the next episode and we'll hit those repositories like I promised before. See you then.